question.
Okay, yeah, so I'm just wondering about the breath in regards to practice.
Uh-huh. So what's your question?
Can you talk a bit about the function of the breath in Anapanasati?
Sure. The first thing that I have to say is you don't breathe, you die. I mean, it's really that simple. So if the breath is actually that vital, why is it that we take it for granted completely and don't think much about it? Where in fact it's really important in the sense of not only keeping us alive, but keeping us functioning and stable. The word spirit actually has to do with that, and you can hear it in words like expire, which actually just means to breathe out, but that's a euphemism for croaking. And so this is actually what the whole world of spirituality should be. When people talk about spiritual or spiritual people or spirituality and all of that kind of stuff, really most people don't really have even a clue about what it is. It's like almost something magical and something close to religion or whatever like that. And the reality is that it's reality. To start living in reality, start living in the air that we actually live in. It's sort of like you've heard the expression that the fish in the water doesn't know that he's in the water. Well, most people don't know that they're in the air. And that we need to start paying attention to the air that's around us. That there are many things that, like for instance, temperature comes to us from the air temperature. Also, the barometric pressure. Most people don't even know when the air pressure changes. Few people are aware of how much moisture there's in the air, or about the breeze. A breeze. They don't know what wind is blowing or anything like that, that they see the movement only in the flags and in the trees without actually experiencing the air upon the body. And so getting in touch with our breathing is actually getting in touch with very vital things. To be in the here now means to be in the ocean of the air and to know that we're in that ocean. In the Aramaic language, the language that Jesus spoke, he often spoke of Abba, which has been translated to the word Father. But if you just look at the word Abba, you can see that what it means is above, about, and it's referring to the surroundings. So when Jesus says, I and Abba are one, that means that he's at one with his environment, not some magical Father up there. But in a way, the air is our Father. It keeps giving us life.
We all share it.
Pardon?
We all share it. It's constantly in exchange between us all.
Right. There's constantly an exchange, that you can't live without the air. That there's a huge exchange of air. They say that a lot of the breathing that we do actually comes through the pores of our skin. And there's a huge amount of exchange. Part of that would be sweat. And we give off all kinds of chemicals that a dog will know whether the person is afraid of them or not by the odor. Dogs are very, very sensitive to the air, much more sensitive to humans. There is also barometric pressure. Do you know what I mean by barometric pressure?
No.
Basically, it means how heavy is the air on you. That you know if you go swimming, especially going deep, then the pressure gets built up enough to where you can tell it. But people who were sensitive, even many, many centuries ago, knew that the pressure of the air changed. Now in meteorology, they know that when the barometric pressure, and by the way, the word barometric only means referring to a barometer, which is a device that measures the air pressure. It's like a glass tube that's formed in a J, so that you have a little bit of air and then a big area of water. And as the air pressure changes, that bubble will get smaller or bigger. And so now they have mechanical barometers, but when it's hot, the pressure is high. And when the air starts to rise, creating an imbalance in the pressure, then cool air will come in under that. That's what causes a rainstorm, that in fact the barometric pressure changes before the storm starts. It won't rain until you have a change in the barometric pressure, which causes the wind to come rushing in, because it's colder air has a lower pressure than warmer air. So you can actually tell. In fact, that's one of the games that Tam and I play, is who is going to guess quicker that it's about to rain.
Right.
Because we can feel it. We can feel it in the air. The air will change, and then we'll say, "Oh." And you can, now that I'm talking about it, you can say, "Yeah, I can tell that too," but I don't generally pay attention to it. Okay, so this is what we mean by why breathing and the air is so important, is because it's part of our reality, but we don't pay attention to it because we're too busy thinking about something long ago, something about to happen, something someplace else, rather than being in the present moment. And when we're paying attention to the breathing, we're paying attention to the present moment. For instance, when we talk about meditating on the breath, nobody meditates on the breath they had 5 years ago. No, this one, this breath. And so Anapanasati, the Buddha knew this. This is why he brings it as part of Anapanasati, is you really get to know the body and the body's relationship to the air around us. In fact, with the eyes and the ears, we can bring in even more of the environment. And so this is what the senses do. The eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body itself. In fact, the body is the biggest antenna. The body is the biggest of all the sense organs. And yet it's the one that we pay the least attention to. At least while we're eating, we pay attention to the taste. We've almost lost our sense of smell. Dogs are really good at being aware of the air. But humans, we don't pay much attention to it. And so practicing Anapanasati will bring that relationship back to us so that we can see the body as it's relating to our environment. So this is part of the practice, is to know that you're taking a long, deep breath, and know when you're letting out a long, deep breath. Sometimes they use the word sigh. Now, some people use the word sigh in a negative way. But I'm talking about it in a very positive way. It's just relax. Be here. Be in your environment. Be with the air that surrounds you. It's with you. This is part of being at one with everything. The at-one-ment, or the atonement, is to be at one with our environment, rather than the duality of there is this, the reality we live in, and then there is that, what I'm thinking about.
Right.
And so much of the practice of Anapanasati is actually paying attention to our relationship with reality, rather than making stuff up. That's why we normally live our lives, is we go around seeing something and then make up a story about it.
And then carry it around.
Pardon?
And then carry it around for years.
Right. And then pick it up and carry it around like it was a pretty stone or something. And soon our bag gets so big that we're like Atlas, carrying a huge world on our shoulders. And the best thing to do is every time that you begin to pick something up, take a look at it and say, do I really want this? And then we put it back down, and pretty soon our bag is not as big as it used to be.
Yeah, and I suppose that's what causes things like depression, just carrying around that big bag of expectations and shoulds and should nots.
Exactly. And so the whole process that we're going through is to recognize that that thought that's part of that bag of stuff, let's put that down right now. Let's keep putting stuff down. Let's let it go. Let us start watching for what's wholesome and what's unwholesome, and start keeping wholesome thoughts about the reality of the moment, and let the unwholesome thoughts about back then or out there in the future or someplace else, let them go. We start to live in the present moment more and more.
Yeah.
So this is the way that we begin to practice, and pretty soon we start practicing more and more often, so that we're more and more and more into the reality of what's going on right now.
You sort of guard. I find myself, it's like I'm guarding the mind. You kind of look for that Mara, and if there's anything that takes you away, it's like you said, it's enough to recognize it and throw it out, or you sort of transfer it into a wholesome thought.
So this is the way that we practice over and over again, and I'm glad to hear that you're getting some good results with it.
Oh yeah, it's great. I feel brilliant.
Good. Now, most students will think, well, now that I can do this, what happens next? And the answer to that is, really, there's no next. Everything happens right back into the here now. And this basic practice, what happens rather than going from one practice to another, is that this practice, we gain skill at it through the various objects. And all the objects of meditation that we will have will be objects associated with what we call the four foundations of sati, or mindfulness, which is the body, the feelings, the mental states, and the mental objects. All of it's localized. The right here, right now, what are we doing? These would be the objects that we would have. Now, before the time of the Buddha, they would take external objects, like a hill far away, or a casino, an object, or maybe fire as a meditation, water meditations. These are the kind of things that they practiced then, also with these four elements. And so the Buddha took it from the outside into the inside. Actually, it's kind of both. It's not that we forego the outside, it's that we start giving equal time to what's happening on the inside. We begin to take internal objects, like how do I feel as I'm breathing in? How do I feel as I'm breathing out? Is there any tension? Is there any worries? Is there any frustrations that are caught in the body? Any, let us say, uncomfortable sensations? And then we take the breath, breathe that in, and breathe it out. While we're breathing in and out, we're actually changing the body. That you can actually, by breathing in and out, we're exercising all of those rib muscles, the rib cage, and that most of the unpleasant sensations are coming from chemicals that have been put into the cardiovascular system, into the blood and lymph system, like adrenaline, cortisol that comes out of the adrenaline gland. And that's what gives us anxiety, tensions, all of that. Now, originally, way, way back in the jungle days, the adrenaline was very useful to get us prepared to fight or flight. Are we going to fight this out? Because this is dangerous. Now we go along living lives of quiet desperation, living lives of a little bit of fear, but there's no place to run to, and there's nothing to fight. For instance, if we have anxiety because the boss is walking down the hall, we're certainly not going to fight him when he gets here, and we're not going to get up and run away because he's here. And so we have to kind of live with those anxieties. The answer to that is we can deal with them through the breathing. We can breathe them out. Just a few breaths, just a few breaths is all it takes to rid ourselves of anxiety. By turning the valve off, by starting to have wholesome thoughts rather than unwholesome thoughts. For instance, the boss coming down the hall, oh, I'm glad to see him. Oh, everything is ready. Got no problems and no worries about the boss coming down the hall at all. And so we can talk ourselves out of the anxiety, but we can also finish it off by breathing it out, letting it go, relaxing.
Is that what the sutras would refer to as tranquilizing the body?
Yes, except that tranquilizing the body is a terrible translation. Very, very naughty translator. Not understanding the Pali at all when they translate it like that. That in fact the word tranquilize sounds like an animal laying passed out completely because they've been shot by a dart. Or something that comes from the outside. You know, like a tranquilizer pill that we take that puts us out. No, what we mean by that word, which is that the Pali word is actually pasa, which means passive. And that a better translation would be relaxed, to relax the body, to get to know it well, experience it well, so that we can relax it. This is actually the first 4 steps of Anapanasati in the sense of steps, or the first of the 4 objects that are mentioned. To breathe in long, to breathe out long, to experience the body, and then to relax the body. Become relaxed, not full of tension, worry, anxiety, and all of that. So that would be one of the objects that we take is, can I actually relax the body? And the answer to that is yes, with the breathing. I can sigh and relax. So that's how we practice.
Can I ask a question about, I think last time you mentioned the Eightfold Path, Anapanasati, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and how that leads to the factors of awakening. Can you speak about how that all ties in again?
The way that the sutra is stated is that we practice Anapanasati for the fulfillment of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which means Anapanasati is the method. Also, the various words like investigating the mind, step 9, and gladdening the mind, step 10, is very much related to the Eightfold Noble Path. That you could say, in fact, that the Eightfold Noble Path is the framework and the way to practice. And then the Anapanasati is how to practice, and that the Sambhojana then winds up being the why we practice. The why we practice would be to gain a kind of sati or mindfulness that keeps coming back. The word that's used is unremitting sati. That we can fall off into worry or anxiety, but then we'll remember to wake up, to come back out of that. Because if we have unremitting sati, then we can have unremitting investigation. And when we have unremitting investigation, then our effort becomes unremitting to the point that it's actually kind of an energy. In the beginning, it's tough going because we don't have the skill of right effort. So we have to work at it. We have to actually change in the sense of making a great big change. But after we practice for a while and get it really good, then that change comes really easy.
Mm.
Just like remembering to take a deep breath actually happens along with taking the deep breath, because
Right.
we've got that effort issue kind of solved, so that it becomes more of an energetic rather than an effort. And so, actually, if you look at it that way, the 7 factors of enlightenment is nothing but the fulfillment of the skill development that we do in the Eightfold Noble Path.
And we practice that through Anapanasati.
And we practice this through Anapanasati. So, that the 4th item on the list of the the Sambhojana, the 7 factors of enlightenment, is that our joy, our wow sensation, actually then becomes unremitting, that we can bring our
Right.
joy up anytime.
Right.
We remember that we can be joyful, that we can remember to have that hit of everything is all right, everything is fine, I'm safe, I'm secure, I'm comfortable, and I'm satisfied. And with that, over and over again, we feel successful. Okay? So, with that, then, comes that relaxation, that we can become completely relaxed. And with that complete relaxation, we bring in that samadhi, which means the organization of mind. And that's when we come then to number 7, which would be, the Pali word is upekkha. And what that means now is fully imbalanced, that we're imbalanced. You've seen the, uh, uh, the wheel. It's mostly Korean, but it's got a bulb and then a wrap around, both black and white, with a center in between.
I don't think so.
I'm sure that you have. I just don't know the name of it
Right.
offhand right now. Okay. Uh, but it's the yin and yang wheel that I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And that someplace is the center balance, so that even though the yin and the yang are running around one another, someplace in the center, there's no movement. This is the tranquil point. This is the balance point, the hub of the wheel, the center of the circle, the core, right, is stable. It doesn't run around. It's only the extremes or the external that's spinning around. And the further away you are from the circle, or the center of the circle, the more activities there are.
You could call that samsara as well.
That's the wheel of samsara, precisely. Is that spinning around, looking for something, getting away from something, and it's all very ignorant. It's the extremes. And political parties go to the extremes, government goes to the extremes. Anybody who wants anything will go to one extreme or the other. And what we're looking for is that middle point, that balance point, that center hub, which is not doing much. In fact, there's
Mm.
nothing to it. That if you look at the wheel or the axle of an old cart years ago, the axle would stay still except moving forward when the wheel is moving, but it doesn't spin around. The axle doesn't spin around. Okay, that it's staying stable to center in the middle. And so that's the way that we want to look at our lives, is that everything's just spinning around. That's okay. I'm just going to stay in the hub, stay in the center, breathing well, understanding that life is just in and out breathing.
Mm.
And so the breathing then is essential for understanding the body. Because if you was completely still, they talk about going into meditation and sitting still. How still can you be? To stop breathing would be really still, but then you'd be dead.
Yeah.
So as long as you're alive, you've got that motion, the body is moving. Let's pay attention to that. And we do that by watching the breathing, the in and the out breathing.
And this is
so,
something you can do all day.
well, when you remember to. I know in our Western culture, we've got this word like always and all the times and all day and all of that kind of stuff with all of the alls in there. And the Buddha would recommend no, keep your sati well developed so that you remember often. You keep coming back to it. All right? Let me play the drum for just a moment. Here is the mallet, and here is the drum head. And if the mallet is always hitting the drum, then it would be like this. Can you make music out that way? Oh no, you do it like this, right? Okay, so this is how our sati, it will go away, but it comes back. It goes away and it comes back. It's always in a cycle. So don't think of sati or the practice of anapanasati or anything like that as something that you get to where you're always doing it. In fact,
Yeah, maybe I
anicca, like
should.
the sankhara, everything is in motion.
Yeah, I think I should have probably reframed it as it's not something we just sit down to intentionally do. We can transfer it through other non-formal activities.
Precisely. That's what we're training for. We get away from it all into seclusion. For some reason, in Western Buddhism, this word formal has gotten into there. Somewhere like that, we dress it up in a penguin costume, white tie and tails, and call that formal, to where, in fact, putting too much structure on it is detrimental. Formal meditation, where if it's really formal, you've got to have a special cushion on a specially waxed floor in a special room called a meditation hall or something that's got a dais with a special Buddha Rupa statue, incense, candles. The hall is divided into two, male on one side, female on the other. All of that. You can get really, really super duper formal. And the answer to that is, why bother? Why do we bother with all of that formality? That what we really need instead is seclusion. And when all of those people go to those retreats, they're not in seclusion. All of those people are in that hall together. Real seclusion is when you're away from those people. That in fact, if you want to go on a retreat, instead of calling it a formal retreat and paying $2,000 for 10 days, why don't you get $200 or $300 worth of camping equipment and go to the woods? Go out into nature. That's what the Buddha recommended. Go to the forest, go to the foot of a tree, or even staying in your room and being in an empty hut. But in seclusion, getting away from it all. And somehow or another, Western Buddhism has gotten that all completely messed up because of these issues about retreats. Oh, come to a meditation retreat. All right, I will. I'm going to go to the woods to do it, though. I'm not going to go to a magic meditation hall.
Mm.
So I would take the word formality and formal out of the practice. That's a very Western concept. And instead, just practice remembering. That in fact, that's another point about the breathing is that if you are actually mindful of or watching your breath so that you remember to take a deep in breath and remember to take a long out breath, every time that you remember, both on the in breath and the out breath, that's 2 points of sati. So if you're watching your breath for 10 minutes, that means that you've got 20 minutes worth of sati. That's what the Buddha recommends. And in fact, that's built right into the sutta. And the skill comes is when you can be mindful of the breathing, mindfully breathing in and mindfully breathing out while you gladden the mind. The
So you
sutta
synchronize
actually
them.
states it that way.
You synchronize them in a way.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So you can use the breathing to synchronize as well as to keep remembering to watch the breath and to watch what the mind is doing, gladden the mind, sweeten our feelings, feel safe and secure and comfortable while we're breathing in and breathing out. while we're relaxing. So this is why it's a development of skill. Then, in fact, the way that it's translated into most of the translations has thus one trains oneself. That this is a training, this is skill development. To be trained to keep the mind gladdened. We keep remembering to bring that gladness back, to brighten the mind. We keep remembering to check the feelings. Do I feel okay, or do I actually feel like that I'm worried? Do I feel in the body the sensations of anxiety? So that we can then use the breath to let all of that out. To break that up. That when you're breathing in, the lungs expand, the blood is moved around, and when you sigh and breathe out, then breathing is almost a second kind of heart, in the sense that the cardiovascular system is affected by your breathing, as well as the exchange in the lungs from throwing the poisons in the blood out and breathing in and getting fresh new oxygen. So this is how the life works, that exchange, and that we almost never pay attention to it. We're too busy looking up the skirts of girls to actually pay attention to, hey, I'm alive. So this is the value of the breathing.
Right. What is the correlation? Because you mentioned emotions there. What's the correlation between thoughts and emotions?
They are interrelated. This is,
right.
In fact, one of the points of Anapanasati. I think it would be like 7 and 8, is to see the relationship between the body, the feelings, the body and the mind and the feelings, to see that interrelation. I can give you many examples. One is that when a fight, let us say a staged event like a boxing match or an exhibition of a martial arts or whatever like that, maybe even WWE, that if you can get your opponent angry, he'll screw up. Why? Because when he gets angry, all the blood brushes out of the brain into the body to do the fighting. And he's not smart enough then. Okay, another example of that is in debate societies. When people are debating things, they have the idea of ad hominem attacks, that you're not supposed to attack your opponent. You're supposed to attack your opponent's view. Why? Because if you attack your opponent, that'll get him flustered, frustrated, anxious, anxiety, perhaps even angry, and then his debate goes off. Right? So there's a show right there. Feelings affect our mind states. And when we're sick, the body being sick affects our mind state. And it drags us down. Oh, poor me, I'm sick. Oh, I don't feel good. And that's, Bhikkhu Buddhadasa talks about that as a very good time to practice. Even though the body is sick, the mind is not sick. Wow, I feel good. I'm so happy that I can just lay here and let the body be sick. It'll get healed well. I'm going to heal this body with my good feelings rather than let the sick body run the show. Okay? So we have to interrupt that relationship that happens naturally and ignorantly. There's an ignorant connection between the body, the feelings, and the mind states, and affects what we think. One of my favorites, by the way, is the 1972 World Champion chess match between Boris Spassky and Bobby Fischer. Now, Boris Spassky was obviously better at chess than Bobby Fischer, but Bobby Fischer was good at it. Just good enough so that he played a lot of psychological tricks on Boris Spassky and got Boris Spassky flustered enough so that Bobby Fischer could win the chess championship. And what would he do? He had several techniques. One was, in chess, there is a rule that if you touch a piece, you have to move it. So what Bobby Fischer would do is he would hover his hand over the piece, that he wanted Spassky to look at, that he intended to move that piece, and got Spassky really frustrated in figuring out what he was going to do when Bobby Fischer moved that piece. And then Bobby Fischer would move another piece. And then after he moved, he'd get up and walk around and stand behind Boris Spassky as if he was stalking him. So that now Boris Spassky had to think about Bobby Fischer behind him. And I've seen that also in politics, that the debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, that Donald Trump would stalk her, that she would be out speaking on the stage, and Donald Trump would come behind her and get the audience, and and she had to worry about this guy because he could attack her from behind, right? Okay, so he threw her off. Bobby Fischer threw off Boris Spassky. How many ways and times do you get thrown off because the feelings that you have are interfering with the job that you have to do with your mind? That's what I mean by, boy, aren't they interrelated? Now you can see that. If that's true, then why don't we take advantage of it so that the mind can now affect the feelings? So if you start having happy thoughts and start having a happy mind state, you'll begin to feel happy too.
Mm.
And so begin to see this, begin to see the interconnection between the body, the feelings, and the mind states, and how they affect what thoughts we're going to have. And so if you have a bunch of thoughts about a situation, like you got into an argument with Aunt Susie, you come in to meditate, and now all you're thinking about is that argument that you had with Aunt Susie, and you wind up feeling anxious and uptight. But if we change our thoughts to where, oh, I really like Aunt Susie, she's really a good debater, I'm going to start listening to what she says rather than trying to fight with her, and start having good thoughts about Aunt Susie. And now all of a sudden, we're not in a state of anxiety and trying to get even with her, but we feel friendly instead. So these are all these various ways, so many of them, to where we can understand the relationship between how we think and how we feel, what mental states we have in the body, that we can actually heal the body. Or we can make ourselves sick with our mind. They call that hypochondria. And also they use the word psychosomatic. Okay? That's the interrelation. Wow, they're really interrelated. So start watching for that interrelationship within yourself, so that you can see how your thoughts affect your feelings, how your feelings affect your thoughts, how your body and your body posture affects your feelings. That in fact, if we can practice by getting the body safe, secure, and comfortable, then we can begin to feel safe, secure, and comfortable. But if we're actually in a situation to where the body is not safe or it's not comfortable, then it's really hard to get the mind and the feelings into being in a state of comfortable. But if you can get the body comfortable, so I'm with this actually right there in the suttas. It's surprising that people teach young beginner meditation students to sit too long, because while they're sitting too long, the body gets uncomfortable. How can you practice correctly to get the mind and the heart, the feelings, in a comfortable, happy, relaxed state when the body's in pain, intentionally because of our posture? No, it's better to practice in a way to where we keep the body relaxed. So if the knees hurt, stand up. Find better postures to get into.
And it's just whatever works for your particular frame.
Yes, find out what works for you. that all I can do is give you general instructions. The actual details you're going to have to go through investigating, to find out how the relationship between the way the body feels and the way the heart feels, the way the feelings. So it's a great big experiment to come to learn who you are, to learn yourself. And that means to stop being critical, stop having critical thoughts about how am I doing and what am I doing wrong and where do I go and all of that, and start nurturing ourselves in the sense of everything's okay. Well, you're all right. Don't worry about a thing. Don't worry about the past. Don't worry about all those screw ups. You just call them screwed ups. But start liking yourself. Make friends with yourself. Become integrated and whole that way. That normally most people are in kind of a war with themselves between all the woulds and shoulds and coulds and supposed tos and oughts and that kind of stuff versus how do we feel? Now, in psychology terms, with Eric Berne making the term of parent and child, we have a parent, adult, and a child. And most of the time we spend in an argument between the parent, our rules, and the child, our feelings, without actually taking the adult and really looking to see. And so the child wants to go and do stuff and get away with it, and all the rules says, no, you can't get away with it. And so we wind up being quite a mess inside. But if we really take a look at what's going on, we can calm that mess down, and now we can become integrated, whole, friendly with ourselves, at peace. So that's how we practice, so that we get integration. Unification of mind is the way that is spoken. This is what is samadhi, not concentration. So what about all of that?
When you say unification of mind, so what aspects are trying come within mind that we're trying to integrate?
Well, stop arguing with yourself, stop complaining, stop judging, stop seeing things as black or white, up and down or back and forth, and find a balance, a middle path, like the hub of the wheel. That when we're spinning around, we're actually in an argument or trying to figure something out. And let's let all of that go and come back to the center. Come back to the hub. Come back to the nothing.
Yeah, that's what I've been trying to do. It's having, if you do get lost in Mara, I kind of say, oh, there you are, I see you, Mara. But here I am, back with Sati, back in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And you just go again.
So let's come back to peace. Let's come back to rest. Let's come back to freedom.
And we always have the choice to do that.
We have the choice if we can see it. This is why we wake up and take a look, so that we can see that stuff, and now we have a choice.
Is that right view?
Pardon?
Is that right view?
Is that what?
Right view? The first of the Eightfold
Well,
Path?
the looking, right, the investigating. Rather than having a world view or changing your ideas about things, throw the ideas out and just look. Looking is what we're actually doing in the present moment, and thinking about it comes later. And that thinking, when we think enough, then we form a concept, and that concept then becomes a view. And
Right.
so we're coming out of our ideas about what is right and what is wrong, and coming into the point of, this is it, right here, right now, without judging it. In fact, we live in paradise, but we talk ourselves out of paradise by figuring out what's wrong with it, trying to fix it. We live in a world of, you got to make it better. And the Buddhist practices is, so long as you're trying to make it better, that already means by definition that it's already unsatisfactory. So let's stop trying to improve things and just enjoy them the way that they are, because they're already satisfactory in reality.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I think I watched one of your videos and you said something like, we all live in a golden palace, but we've filled it up with trash bags. And once you throw the trash out, you kind of realize you're in a palace.
Mm-hmm. Yes, just recently we had an idea. In fact, one of our friends is going to ChatGPT and getting some images, and he came up with a cat in heaven with all the clouds and everything. And we got to it. You've heard the expression, monkey see, monkey do. Well, all the monkeys out there have been telling you that you're a man, and so you begin to believe that you're a man. The reality is that you're a fat cat in your own heaven, clouds and all. But you've been convinced that you're not a king of your own heaven, that you're just a human full of troubles that monkeys give you. And so the reality is that you live in a paradise. You're king of the hill. You're the boss here. Enjoy the paradise that you've built, or that you enjoy being in, as opposed to trying to make it better. Everything is already okay. You're already enlightened, if you could see it that way. But when you want something, oh, I want enlightenment, then for sure, now you're in a struggle. Now you want something. Now you're in a duality. In fact, it's not just enlightenment, but anything we want means that we want it. We liked it first, and liking something, and that's okay. I like it. That's good. But if I like it, I want it. And if I want it and don't have it, that means that I would be better off if I did have it, which means that right now I'm not whole. I'm not complete. I'm not good enough because I don't have what I want. But if we could recognize, oh, whatever it is that I like, I don't necessarily need it. I don't want it. I can do without it because I'm already whole. So desire and wanting actually creates a hole inside. It creates a gap. It keeps us from being integrated. It keeps us from being a unified mind. It keeps us broken because we want things in order to be whole. In fact, we're already whole until we wanted something.
Do you think that's maybe where things like the maps are detrimental?
The map of what?
Do you think that's where maybe the maps are detrimental because they sort of assume that you need to travel and attain this and get that?
Right. And the maps are not the territory. We make mental maps of reality and then live in our map rather than actually live in reality. The joke is that the guy runs into a tree because he's looking at his cell phone and the map didn't show a tree. Or maybe the Google map, which is pretty accurate, but the Google map doesn't have the fact that the road mechanics have all these yellow cones up and they've torn the road up. Or maybe there was a sinkhole. The sinkhole doesn't have that on the map. If you keep following the map, you're going to fall into a hole. So it's better to watch where we're going rather than watch where we're going on a map. So if we can take that from the cell phone into the fact that we make a lot of mental maps, we think that we know where we are, but a better thing to do is to look, to see where we are, rather than to believe where we are.
Can I ask you a question about decisions? Because I feel like as I've become more predominantly left-brained as I've got older, everything seems to get put through those mental maps. Like when I was a child, if I wanted to choose between an apple or a banana, it would just happen. There was no dissonance. There was no mental map created. But
Mm-hmm.
now it's like it needs to be put through this filter first. And this morning, like when I chose between a piece of fruit, I tried to drop that filter and I kind of froze up. I was like, I'm not used to choosing without deploying this mechanism. And I don't know what you have to say about that.
I would say a lot. Congratulations for you being able to start to see it now, because you grew those maps without even knowing that you grew them. So when you were a kid, you didn't have very many maps. Kids more than likely will live in reality until they're forced into the maps. The big number one map that kids have to get forced into is called first grade. School. School is nothing but making the kid conform to a set of maps that he's learned. I mean, the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, etc., is just a map.
Yeah, I don't know my alphabet. I can't recite it, so I didn't learn that one.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you don't know that map? I don't know the Thai map, but I do know 26 letters of the English alphabet. Yes, these are all maps. In fact, what you could say is that mathematics has grown and matured and changed and modified, but mathematics is nothing but a human mental map of reality. And now the physicists are getting really confused because all the maps that they made with the Hubble telescope is being thrown out by all the new maps that they're getting from the James Webb telescope. And they haven't figured out that the next telescope after that is just going to throw all their math out again. So now that you know that you're living in a mental map system rather than in reality, you can say, hot dog, I'm glad I see those maps, and now I can just throw them out. That's all this, what's called Sankara. Those maps that we make about how things should be and all are interfering with our enjoyment of the reality that we find ourselves in right now.
We must have sort of put faith in them because we thought through ignorance somehow they must be serving us.
Well, we were told to. In fact, in many cases, we were punished if we didn't fit into the map. That's that monkey see, monkey do. We see all of these humans around us, all these monkeys living there, and we got to behave like they do. That's the civilization, the training of a child. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will kiss your ass. That's in the Bible. I'm thinking they've got a different translation than I do.
There's a lot of fear mongering as well, isn't there? Like, you must conform and be this way. And there's a great quote that says something
You're
like,
going to go to hell.
Yeah. And there's a quote that says, the biggest treason a crab can commit is to make a leap for the rim of the bucket. And it does feel like that.
Say that
That
again.
the greatest treason a crab can commit is to make a leap for the rim of the bucket.
Ah, yes. That's the metaphor, because in fact, there is no leaping necessary and there's no rim of the bucket. But in fact, what we need to do is just relax and sink to the bottom. That's the worst tragedy. We're all supposed to leap for the bucket. We're just not supposed to get to the rim.
Right.
But the real heresy is to stop leaping and just float. And so every time that you see yourself leaping, like according to the map, you can say, wow, I'm glad I don't have to do that. I can just lay on my back and float.
Right.
Relax. Take it easy. Well, why don't we bring it to a close now? We've had about an hour, and I think that you've gotten somewhere with this. And so call back in a couple of days. Keep practicing. Keep practicing. Go with the breath. Get into it. Start living in reality of your breath, in and out, seeing that the interrelationships between the body and the feeling and the mind states are quite real.
Yeah.
And you can see these interrelationships, so that you can see also these maps that we make and come out of them, come into a joy, feel the way you want to feel instead of the way you've been taught to feel. Did you know that? You could feel any way right now. You could feel the way that you wanted to feel. How do you want to feel right now? Why don't you check that out? Start feeling the way you want to feel instead of feeling the way you were taught to feel. How would you feel right now if you could feel the way that you wanted to feel?
Be blissed out.
Relaxed, floating, not having to do the breaststroke, not even dog paddle, just float. Easy peasy. All right, Callum. Well, we'll see you in a few days then.
All right. Thank you.
All right.